Nvidia 10 series of cards is creeping towards the 1 decade mark since the original release. Despite that, the cards can still be considered as viable options, at least in the higher end spectrum. As for the lower end of the lineup, maybe the absolute lowest you can go is the 1050 Ti, the card we are testing today. 1050 Ti was kind of a successor to the legendary 750 Ti, offering similarities like low power consumption and a perfectly matched amount of VRAM. One particular thing worth noting is the release price for this card. For a bit under $150, you could get, for the time at least, a pretty capable card. Hard to find a new card in the same price bracket nowadays. So, let's see whether the money spent a long time ago was a good investment, even after so many years, and if the card can be taken into consideration from the used market. The most recent and probably most popular release of recent times is Counter-Strike 2, a perfect match for a card like the 1050 Ti. As you can see, the FPS never drops below 100, delivering a great experience all around. It should be noted that this game, from my experience, is a hit or miss depending on the hardware you're using, at least for now, since it's relatively new and still definitely needs some fixes. Another easy-to-run title is Overwatch 2. Using the high preset is maybe a bit too much for competitive play, but it shows some decent capabilities of the 1050 Ti. Even at these settings, the card delivers FPS into the 3-digit region. Let's now move on to the real deal, AAA titles. Cyberpunk is first on the AAA roster. Initially, I tried 1080p with FSR set to balanced. And well, it's not the greatest experience. So after switching to 900p with the same FSR settings, the game becomes much more playable, delivering more stable FPS, and to be honest, for the settings used, doesn't look that bad. The Witcher 3 Remastered Edition works best at 1080p low, offering decent FPS with solid visual quality. Higher settings do drop below 30 FPS. Lowering the resolution doesn't benefit the FPS as much as it reduces quality, so 1080p low is just perfect here. God of War usually works awfully bad on lower-end cards with less than 4GB of memory. Luckily, the 1050 Ti got this box checked on the requirements, and as you can see, does perform reasonably well, being perfectly playable and looking good as well. The Resident Evil 4 remake seems like a pretty well-optimized title from the tests I have done so far on various hardware. The 1050 Ti really works wonders here, approaching the 50 FPS mark quite often, so it's safe to say that the recent remake and remasters can work quite well on the 1050 Ti. Kind of similar performance to the previous few games at the same settings can be seen in Elden Ring. This was a surprise for me. Knowing how demanding the game is, I expected the card to struggle at 1080p, but the little card always manages to amaze. Alongside Cyberpunk, Dying Light 2 is another title that won't really run well at 1080p, so 900p with FSR set to quality is the requirement for the game to run good enough. I honestly didn't expect this game to be the most demanding on the benchmark list, but seems like something about it just isn't working well on the 1050 Ti. So as it seems, the 1050 Ti isn't really a bad card at all. Definitely not bad for esports games. For AAA releases, there you would need to find some sweet spot in terms of settings for it to deliver decent FPS. Of course, new games are coming out, and I doubt that 1050 Ti will do as well as it does here. But for a casual gaming setup, mostly aimed at esports games, this compact card can be perfect. The question is, should you get one for yourself? Maybe. Depends on what you would like to do with it, and depends even more on the price you get it at. I think around $40, which is the price I paid for it, should be the price you should look at. Otherwise, there may be better GPUs out there. There are even now. I got the RX 580 for $50, and it wasn't even a mining card. So yeah, it's a strange situation on the used market. As always, thanks for joining me on this review of the excellent 1050 Ti. Make sure to subscribe to not miss out on my future projects.